He also joined the Plinian Society, a student natural history group. The ship, captained by Robert Fitzroy, was to embark on a 2-year survey of the coast of South America. Darwin's father initially objected to the voyage, but was persuaded by his brother-in-law, Josiah Vetco de Secente. He found fossilized trees that had once grown on a beach. The most pivotal part of his journey was the visit to the Galapagos Islands. He noticed that the mockingbirds differed from one island to another. He also collected finches, which were later to become famous as Darwin's finches. At the time, he did not fully appreciate the significance of these variations. He observed giant tortoises with shells that varied in shape depending on their island of origin. The Beagle returned to England on October 2nd, 1836, taught him. Darwin was now a celebrated figure in scientific circles. His collection of specimens was praised by experts. The ornithologist John Gould informed him that the Galapagos birds were distinct species of finches. This was a crucial piece of the puzzle. Darwin began to speculate on the transmutation of species. He opened his first secret notebook on the topic, labeled B. In 1838, he read Thomas Malthus's an essay on the principle of population. Malthus argued that population growth would always outstrip food supply, leading to a struggle for existence. Darwin realized that this struggle applied to the natural world. Favorable variations would tend to be preserved, and unfavorable ones destroyed. This was the beginning of his theory of natural selection. is to depart indefinitely from the original type, outlined the theory perfectly. Darwin was devastated. Writing to Lyle, all my originality, whatever it may amount to, will be smashed. Vista non persisei. Lyle, He connected the struggle of a seedling for life with the origin of all species. His theory was built upon a mountain of evidence from around the globe. He corresponded with naturalists all over the world, gathering facts. The theory of evolution is itself evolving, as new discoveries are made. Genetics, unknown to Darwin, provided the mechanism for inheritance and variation he was missing. The discovery of DNA confirmed the deep connections between all life forms. Darwin's fundamental idea, however, remains as powerful as ever. He taught humanity to see itself as part of nature, not separate from it. The world is immeasurably richer for his patient and revolutionary work. His intellectual courage in publishing his work, despite his fears, was immense. He understood that scientific truth must be pursued regardless of the consequences. The publication of Origin was a moment of profound intellectual liberation. It opened up entirely new fields of scientific inquiry. His influence extends far beyond biology, into philosophy, ethics, and art. Charles Darwin, the quiet observer of nature, had given the world a new way to see